Welcome to Travel Again Presents, the weekly travel roundup covering the headwinds and tailwinds impacting the business of travel. Please welcome our hosts, Mike McCormick and Ed Silver. Hello, Mike. Welcome back.
Hey, Ed. Good to see you as always.
Good to see you too. We are still in season 3, episode 4. Man,
Yep.
we are just cooking this season.
Yep. It's great. Great guests. Never ending amount of content and issues and news to talk about as well. So I'm looking forward to another episode.
Yeah, we're going to cover the news as always. There's some serious ups and downs in travel, which we'll go through. And then, man, today's guest, I have been looking forward to this guest for a while. It is one of my favorite topics, covering loyalty, credit card, bank travel platforms. Yeah. Man, Mike, hold on to your hat. It's going to be a great interview today.
Yep, should be good.
All right, with that, Mike, let's bust right into the news. I've chosen 3 articles today for us, as always. The first one from the New York Times: airlines cut forecasts, raising an early alarm about consumer spending. Mike, from the New York Times, airlines flashed an early warning signal on Tuesday, March 11th, suggesting that consumers and businesses were starting to get nervous amid wider economic and political uncertainty. Several carriers cut their financial forecasts for the first months of the year, saying that revenues would be weaker than expected. They pointed to a number of reasons, Mike: bad weather, high-profile plane crashes, and less spending by consumers, businesses, and the federal government. And lastly, here's a quote from Ed Bastian, quote, "We just went through a little bit of a parade of horribles." He said this at the JP Morgan Industrials Conference on Tuesday morning. Any insight here, a little context for our listeners, Mike?
Well, as always, I mean, travel is a indicator of the economy, of where business is going. It's an early indicator. I mean, we've shown that for years and years and years of all the work we've been involved in the industry over the years. It's amazing how much of an indicator it is. And it's an indicator of GDP growth. It's an indicator of, overall, let's say, mood or wariness about the economy. It just shows through because travel drives business everywhere. It's what, it's again, an indicator for future business growth or slowdown. And then on the personal spending side, I mean, travel is also like a great indicator for where the mindset is of the consumer for travel, but their overall budgets, right? So it's not a surprise to me, his parade of horribles. I think he's even understating it, honestly. And the current environment, and that I'll say that it is, and it also shows the resiliency of travel too, which is another thing, right? That ultimately, despite the parade of horribles that might have wrecked other industries, like travel kind of does always live on, right? Because people need the connection for a variety of reasons, personally, professionally. So there's a lot in there, but I think the fact that, look, that this is getting covered in the way it is tells you how much now too the industry, everyone looks towards those as indicators for what's going to happen down the road. And then, not surprisingly, there's so much turmoil and uncertainty and everything happening here in Washington, and what that's creating too. You're seeing it, the stock market effect there and everything else. Well, of course, that takes away from consumer and then ultimately traveler confidence. Like not for maybe safety reasons, primarily. Usually those things are very isolated. When something happens, from a safety perspective or security perspective, it has an impact, but it's generally pretty short-lived, relatively. But ultimately the bigger effect is what we're seeing. So again, not surprising, but also very obviously disappointing, because we've had a nice trajectory going here, and now we're hitting on maybe a little different, growth kind of, and or flattening of the growth curve, at least for a little while. So again, a lot to look at here, and one we certainly will pay close attention to, but obviously, I think others will too if they're smart, because it is a great indicator.
Mike, do you think consumers should expect to see lower costs for flights or fewer routes? Is that how the airlines will respond, or neither?
Well, on the airline front, I mean, look, capacity cuts, capacity increases, those take time to work into their, flight schedule and system and everything else, like in terms of planning. So even though they're saying, well, we're, United and Delta, have others said, that they're going to kind of trim capacity. Usually when they're trimming, it's kind of in areas where they have some unprofitable routes, some underserved, routes that aren't performing as well, that they may dial back a bit. Not primary, changes to their, route structure and everything. But they try to, trim and prune and reposition aircraft and or park them if that's what's required, right? But yeah, so I think you do have that kind of impact, but that usually takes a little time to work itself through the system. So it's not an immediate thing, but it is something, again, they've signaled they're willing to do. Traditionally, airlines are really good at increasing capacity, not so great about dialing back capacity when they really
Right.
need to. So, they're out in front of that too, in terms of letting the shareholders know so nobody gets spooked. But here we are.
Okay. Thanks for that perspective. Mike, Article 2 today is on AI. No shocker that I've chosen an AI article for us. This one is Autonomous AI Agent Manus joins the fray. This is from our friends at FocusWire. Blink and you could miss the launch of the latest artificial intelligence initiative. Manus, Latin for hand, is described as a general AI agent and has already demonstrated its ability to put together a complex travel itinerary as it created a 7-day trip from Seattle to Japan. The prompt for the China-based AI agent, which is in early preview, asks for a detailed itinerary as well as handbook, including maps, attractions, descriptions, and some essential Japanese phrases and travel tips. So, like Operator in many ways that we talked about on a previous episode, Manus steps up. Thoughts on this one, Mike?
Well, so this is where I get, I think this is more of a question for you. Like, we're certainly at the very early phases of the introduction of this AI agent and the impact on the industry. The question for me starts to become like how this is going to play out, like thinking ahead. It's like, yeah, the capabilities will keep, enhancing. But like, okay, so I have this Manus, like, but are people really going to, we're all focused on it in the industry, but are people really going to go there, get there, use it? Are, is a Manus going to build demand, like build up demand and build up a following, like independently of, suppliers or OTAs or the loyalty, travel providers, right? So I, I find that hard to believe. I mean, people still like fundamentally lean into brands, like they think brands and brand loyalty first, not some AI tool that was developed in some other part of the world, right? I mean, so I think to me, the game is, you've got maybe some new entrants that will, incorporate all these capabilities, but effectively try to build a consumer brand on top of that, right? As opposed to the tools being front and center. Like, you know what I mean? It doesn't feel like that's where we're going to end up. But I could see, where somebody might take a tool like a capability like that and then build like a whole new kind of front end experience on it, that's more that's maybe a whole different flow in terms of the planning and booking flow than what we're used to today, and it takes off, right? For example, and that could be to me the ultimate threat. But I just feel like, like for your average consumer right now, they're not gonna. It's like, oh, I'm gonna go to Manus to like, no, they're gonna go to the places, the brands they recognize and know. But I don't know your comments on that. I mean, I know from a tech perspective, we're paving new ground every day. So
Yeah, and I think that's the key and why I raised this one as an article to watch. As in the same way I raised Operator on a previous
yeah,
episode. It's not so much that I think Operator or Manus are going to take over travel. It's more the example of that AI can now consume the web. AI
yeah,
can also consume and view your computer, and that those enhancements, those breakthroughs could lead down the road to ways in which travel could be searched in a meta way. I
right,
particularly think meta search should be watching out for these types of things. And it's just an advancement that is fascinating to watch from a technology perspective, and one that eventually could make its way to a consumer. Both Manus and Operator are not even available for the general pop
Right.
at this stage. So we're relying on third-party reports about how it works and maybe even the company's demo of it. So way more to come, but
Right.
fascinating to see the speed of development here, in this sector is just amazing.
Yeah, I mean, like the elapsed time between this innovation and the next one seems to keep really compressing. To your point, right? I mean, it is really something to see. I mean, we're seeing like basically it's a it's a it's like a race, a space race of its own way, right? Or kind of thing, right? It's like where you're the next iteration, the better tool, It's like it's not like doesn't take a year; it takes like 2 weeks, and the next thing is out, right? It's crazy.
It's exactly right. And the article was funny because it says blink and you might have missed it. And this one came out of nowhere. And it's just another one to keep an eye on.
Yeah, good stuff.
Okay. Mike, Article 3, I chose in light of our guest, but also because it is one of my favorite sectors. And it's from our friends at Skift. The article is banks and credit card companies are shaking up travel. And for Skift, they gave 3 key takeaways. And let me
Right.
give you a little perspective on this. Travel loyalty programs have become dull and overcrowded, with increasingly brand agnostic consumers who prioritize discounts and perks over traditional loyalty. Maybe time for something new. New entrants such as banks and credit cards are capitalizing on the opportunity and are entering the travel space through the launch of their own dedicated travel booking platforms. Now, that is not a surprise, but there are 3 key takeaways, according to Skift. Our banks and credit cards are going it alone. Banks are quickly gaining share, and banks are growing through B2B deals with OTAs. So, what's your perspective here, Mike? And we'll obviously have to ask our guest what's going on here.
Well, I was going to say we probably a lot of this will share for our guest with our guest and kind of wait on getting into it. But to me, when you boil it all down, it still comes back to a lot of the same kind of core principles at play here. One is like cost of acquisition of a customer, the loyalty, how much loyalty can you build into the relationship so that the lifetime value of that customer keeps going up. It's a scale game in travel, in terms of the cost of acquiring customers, the cost of capital expenditure back into the business that's required. I mean, this is not at least from historically, this has not been a small budget, small player game. I mean, some innovation comes from that area. Most of the time in our industry, those companies get bought up and absorbed into the bigger brands that have the spend and have the reach and have built the volume so that they can go spend literally billions of dollars on customer acquisition, right? And even the brands themselves, I mean, they spend, that's a big part of their focus. So to me, like a lot of the fundamentals are the same, but what's interesting is that, to your point, back to like the dream is that you being the customer comes to you first, right? If it's your credit card company that is offering you, like you want the hub of activity for them to always be coming to you, comparing to you, coming through you first, booking where you may not always book there, or you may not always ultimately use your points or whatever, but the fact is you're putting the majority of your travel wallet is going into that relationship, right? And that's the battle, right? Is ultimately, right? So it's just very interesting, and it's interesting how the big shifts then change between and now, like, to the point of the OTA relationships and everything, it gets really interesting, right? Interesting bedfellows as the market changes, and as it does, right? Yeah, I mean, I think it's leading us right into our guest, which is, this is a really interesting conversation. But anyway, any thoughts from you?
No, I think I will wait to hear from our guest, but I will say just one quick thing. I'm probably not unlike many consumers who have stopped focusing on my loyalty, kind of work with any particular brand or any particular airline, and I rely on my credit card, to be able to go anywhere with any airline. And so I'll be curious to hear if I'm not the only consumer doing that. Obviously, I'm not. And as you can see, the growth of Chase in that particular graphic was really incredible. So it'll be interesting to hear more about that.
Well, I have a mini theory about some of that too. I want to talk with our guest about, so I'll save it. I won't even bring it up right now.
All right. The build up to our guest grows. Mike, we will be right back with our guest. Mike, this week we recorded a spotlight episode covering Focusrite's latest report, the Focusrite Travel Innovation and Technology Trends Report. Let me pull that up for our guest because it's a mouthful. Trends 2025, generative AI and digital identity converge. And so a really great report from our friends at Focusrite, covering all the latest trends in AI and what's going on with digital identity. And our listeners should really go out. The report is free, unlike a lot of the Focusrite research. And so this is a great one to go out and look at. Michael Coletto from Focusrite did a fantastic job covering what's going on in Gen AI across the board. And it really covers the most significant innovation trends in travel technology and distribution for 2025 and beyond. You can read the report at both Focusrite, and we will make the report available as well. And then lastly, if you are interested in more beyond just reading the report, you can hear from folks about this by registering for their conference at Focusrite.com. And they're going to do a series of these, Mike. The first one is called the New Agents Trends Series, Part 1, the impact on company operations. Obviously, we talk a lot about AI and travel, but this is a chance for people to register and hear from operators and get a sense of what is going on and continuing to go on in that space. And so the report, go download it from our site or from Focusrite, and enjoy that and register for the event. The event is on March 20th. 2025 at 11 a.m. Fantastic new report from Focusrite. All right, Mike, now on to our guest. Today, our guest is Jason Wynn. Jason Wynn serves as the CEO of Chase Travel, where he leads all travel-related functions and shapes the consumer travel strategy for Chase. His responsibilities encompass overseeing Chase Travel Corporate Solutions, Frosh, and Valerie Wilson Travel. Under his leadership, Chase Travel offers Chase card members a comprehensive suite of travel content and resources, including the Edit, Voyages, and Reserve travel designers to help them craft their dream travel experiences. Please join me in welcoming Jason Wynn to the stage. Welcome, Jason.
Hi there.
Hey, Jason.
How are you, Mike?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm great. Thanks for having me on here.
Well, thanks for taking some time. Jumping right in. I mean, look, I've known you in the industry. We've over the years, but it's been quite a journey for you and really for Chase in parallel to be sitting here today with that all under your umbrella. Just take a minute. Tell me about tell us about your journey a little bit to getting here and how's it going in this at Chase right now.
Yeah, journey is a good way to describe it. It's been fast-paced, a little bit of a roller coaster, but an incredible ride, and I think we're really excited about the future. How did I get here? Listen, we're all the sum of our experiences. I've been in the industry coming up on 30 years now. Started in the airline space. Had an awesome opportunity to work with some young execs that now are kind of the stalwarts and leaders of the airline industry, Doug Parker and Robert Isom and Scott Kirby, Andrew Nacella, a guy named J.R. Wilson, who, bought a bunch of airlines, including Frontier and that, with Bill Franke. So it was a great way to cut my teeth in the industry and learned a lot from those guys. Had a chance to go from there to, American Express, where I learned a different side of the business and more about distribution and the customer side. And then ultimately, and Mike, we had some overlap, just in conversation because we were both in the DC area at the time. I had a chance to go work for a startup, work for the founder of Priceline, a guy named Jay Walker, had an idea around business travel, sort of in the space of what Navan and Travel Perk is doing, but a little bit different take on it. And did that for 5 years, trying to build that business, ultimately, unsuccessful, but I would say the best education, maybe the most expensive education I've ever received. Although I did go to Columbia, so maybe not, I don't know. But certainly the most valuable, and in the sum of trying to build something from scratch, and what I had learned prior to that then kind of led me to the opportunity with Chase. Allison Beer, who is our CEO of all card and commerce products, was someone who I worked with during my American Express time. And she reached out saying, hey, kind of coming out of COVID, we see a real opportunity here and would like for someone to come in and, formalize this strategy for us.
Well, it's interesting too. And, you were talking about the upside with Jay and all that, but, one of those that, to your point, like not everything works. Sometimes you learn as much from the things that don't ultimately as the ones that do. Right. And, but in that case, like you did have, it seemed like on that one, you had like a loyalist following but it didn't get beyond that. People were either like, this is the best thing ever, or they were like, hell no, never. Right. There was no middle ground on that proposition. It was interesting though. It was like an interesting little part of our history in the travel sector. Right. So, well, now you sit on top of, really a broad range of assets. And I know, some of them, it's been a combination of acquisition and which could certainly put the building blocks together, but then also obviously a lot of integration work and organically growing at the same time and doing everything. I'm always fascinated by those. I mean, Ed and I met because of our involvement in Sendent, which was also a similar, right, in its own, way, and all the brands we put together and all the assets we put together. And,
by the way, Todd Siegel, who's the CEO of CX Loyalty, came from Sendent. He worked over there as well. So
yeah, we always say it's like 1 degree of separation, man. There's no, like, everybody is like the paths all cross, right?
Yeah.
But it's interesting, like when you do that, like I always used to say, like, we would go and do, at that point with Sendent, we had a blank checkbook to go get what we needed. It had to work, of course, and it had to produce results. But there's always that pressure of, literally the 18 to 24 months it just always takes to like bring on and integrate an asset and, as opposed to what's on paper. Investment bankers, shareholders want to say, well, it's in the plan, so therefore it's done already. Like they don't want to hear about the 18 to 24 months it takes to put it all together. And in your case, I mean, it was ambitious, right? You were to do a whole vertical integration between CX Loyalty on up to what the consumer is actually seeing doing the brands. I mean, it was ambitious. But tell me, like, where do you think you are now? How do you think you are? Where do you sit versus competition, et cetera? Give me a little bit of a state of the union for Chase.
So, Mike, are you saying that integrations are hard?
We all know they are. That's for sure.
They're easy for me because I just tell Ed to do them.
They're like, that's exactly right. I was just going to say.
Yeah. I mean, everything looks so perfect on paper. Yeah, listen, I've been incredibly proud of the team and, the leadership of the teams we've acquired between CX Loyalty and Frosh, and how everyone kind of onboarded the mission of going after a bigger prize and, trying to keep everyone in the boat and sell them on, hey, here was a thing that you were focused on yesterday, which is no longer the thing. It's now focused on that. All of that is incredibly difficult, but I think we've managed it really, really well. I think we still have the last kind of couple miles in the marathon to go around some of the tech integrations, but we feel really good about it. I think the thing we're trying to do, and, the notion behind it was pretty straightforward, which was like, hey, if we look at our competitors in the loyalty space, if we look at our sort of competitors writ large within travel, what are the things that we think are going to give us the most control over the future destiny? And it was like, all right, we need to own our own tech. So this whole notion of high tech with CX Loyalty, having our own platform. We have over 1,000, product and engineers and design folks within the organization, fully dedicated to our roadmap and travel, which is absolutely incredible. And then it was, all right, how do we service that? And how do we make sure we can deliver, the high-end capabilities? And that's where Frosh came in, for that high touch. And really sitting at that intersection was, if I was to boil it down into something that was really simple, it was, can we sit at that intersection of high tech and high touch, given the assets that we've got within JP Morgan Chase, which skew affluent, and how do we deliver that experience for the future? And so, as we've moved on, I feel even more bullish behind the strategy. I think it's proving itself out, still a ton left to do, but I couldn't be happier with the acquisitions that we've made, and so far so good.
Good. Yeah. And so I'll come at it a little different direction. This is one I wanted to, I'm always curious about. I mean, Ed and I certainly have also done a lot of work with, various brands around the space and certainly in your space. And I'm always curious because, like, at the end of the day, I mean, look, Chase is a bank, credit card issuer, that's the core business, right? And we working in the travel industry always, to me, travel is everything, right? And there's certainly brands and companies out there that are solely focused on travel. That's, what they do. And it always struck me a little bit of the balance of, although I assume within Chase that travel, in terms of for any cardholder, the most important benefit to them is travel or travel related benefits, or the things that that the vast majority of your customers would say would be the most important kind of feature, aside from the actual credit card vehicle itself, like what they do. But at the end of the day, the business is, like, it's a balance, right? And where does travel fit in the priorities within Chase? Like, do you feel like it's, is it the highest priority? Is it like, because you could see where it doesn't have to be, but it creates an interesting kind of, let's say balance or conflict at times when you need resources, you need things, you need focus, you need attention. Like, how do you balance all that within Chase?
Yeah, I mean, a couple points there. I mean, one, JP Morgan Chase is so large, right? Jamie talks about our fortress balance sheet, and we've got 80 million households on the Chase side that bank with us or work with us. So the ecosystem is absolutely massive. And I think the notion, which really was Marianne Lake and Allison, to their credit, coming out of COVID, was this. There's a lot of disruptors out there, especially in fintech, that are kind of taking slim portions of the value proposition, delivering these beautiful experiences, and kind of chipping away to get at our core asset, which is deposits and banking. And it was, all right, well, like, what things can we do top of funnel to increase engagement? And travel's this natural adjacency, right? It's like, hey, this is so important to folks. We don't own our own assets. So, like, let's control our destiny in that space and be able to deliver these great experiences by which, we can bring new customers in, especially skewing younger, and start to, get them into our fray. And by the way, I listened to your, the fact that you referenced the Skift article. I mean, that's exactly what we're trying to do is get these younger generation who are looking to their bank for more than just their bank, and are starting to adopt and see us as ones who can influence their lifestyle experiences and be able to deliver against that promise. Ultimately, that then brings them into the core assets like banking. And so capital light recurring revenue that comes from travel, opportunity to, engage these customers across their day-to-day. That was the reason behind it. And, for us, and of course there's balancing of priorities across the firm, but the fact of the matter is, as a result of these acquisitions, as I referenced, we're self-contained. I've got, 6,000 employees, including tech, fully dedicated to travel. Our profit margin that is sustainable enough where we're our own ecosystem, and we're able to invest the way that we need to invest. And it's just really a great differentiator and benefit for us to have.
one of the fundamentals, like it always comes back to the money, but it's like, hey, look, and it's, airlines can say that, I mean, travel's never going to have the margins that banking's going to have. I mean, let's just be real, right? That inherently is part of the challenge. But to your point, like, but I appreciate kind of even what you're saying, and like that you're building, really, you've built this like self-contained full end-to-end business that, delivers on its own. You could pull, I mean, to me, you could take Chase Travel out, put it over here as a separate company, and you've got a healthy company that, like with great, really strong numbers relative to our industry, right? And that's always I mean, to me, a bit of the push and pull, but it's an interesting balance. But you guys seem to be managing it well. So it's just I always like look at those, even from a leadership perspective, right? You're, foot on the pedal, gas brake, it's like always those balancing acts, right?
Yeah, that's right.
With travel loyalty generally, now back to loyalty, where do you see loyalty programs going? Where do you see the future for, your programs?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little crystal ballish, but I think the data in that's pretty telling. And the Skift referencing back to that, and the both of you discussing, how you look at your points. That I believe the trends are telling us that the younger generation is less brand loyal in their loyalty program. So when you think about, just having all your points in one particular supplier, and that's doesn't tend to be where people are focused. And that's where, the loyalty programs have a real benefit, in the fact that, you're accruing these things through not just your behavior with travel, but your everyday spend, and you're building up, essentially this war chest to be able to deploy against these great lifestyle things that you want to do, travel being a primary one. And so, just the growth that we're seeing within the card business, and what we're seeing around millennials, Gen Zs coming, which is the lion's share of new acquisitions that are coming in, suggests to us that our currency, which is ultimate rewards, and our product, travel and dining, and these other assets we have, are the things that are resonating. And so I think we're going to go from strength to strength.
Yeah. Okay. Let's kind of shifting gears to, like, AI, personalization, use of data. I mean, clearly, secure use, appropriate use of data is obviously hugely fundamental to your business, right? Where do you see the trends going for you there? Where are you placing your bets? Where do you see, AI in the bigger picture for Chase Travel? Little thoughts along those lines?
Yeah, I mean, we hear about these things all the time, that this is going to change travel, and that, whether it was the online travel agencies and that, previously, this is one that, the closer I get to it, this is fundamentally going to change travel. AI. I just, one of the benefits that we have at the firm is we are obviously investing heavily in this space. We've been investing in this space for years and years and years. So now it's just, these large language models and that coming to fruition. But we are tapped in with a lot of the LLM providers, having conversations with them around what they're seeing, how we can work together, and just increasingly, I'm like, oh, this is going to change the game. So we are putting a lot of focus here. Yeah. Starting point is obviously just more around efficiency. How can we make the agents take work away, fair rules and things in the GDS that are really complex, and simplify those down real time, taking in calls. We have over 2 million calls that have been fully analyzed now. So every call that comes into our call center gets fully analyzed for issues and what was the core of it, that we can analyze and bring that back to the next call. So it's really around that. The future is going to be around the agentic side of things, and we're working through our plans there. And I still believe that the agent will be in the middle, but this is going to be the thing that absolutely supercharges our business. And I think for us, where we think we are going to be in more of a catbird seat with this is we are sitting on the biggest amount of data out there, relative to the travel industry, just given our card business and, the transactions that are going through. So being able to leverage that in our models and being able to bring back, personalized sort of results, it's got to be the thing that for us is going to, over time separate us from the pack if we do it right.
Anything coming soon related to the user interface in terms of how the user searches for travel once they're within your portal?
Yeah, I mean, the customer facing side of it is the next step. Obviously, given we're bank regulated in that, we've got to do it the right way and think through it. I think the good news for us is if we're talking about, we sit behind a firewall, so you've got to authenticate these. So there's two different paths here. There's hey, can you just do something out in the wild? Much harder equation for us to do given data privacy in that, versus you log in and now you're in our ecosystem. And given that a lot of the search in that is not going to require proprietary data, at least at the outset, to come back with, hey, we've got this great edit property, right, which would meet your needs, or here's how you can maximize your points balance to be able to get for 50,000 points, how you get air car, whatever that might be. All those use cases are well within our purview and things that we're marching towards.
Well, I think one of the advantages you have in that part is that in order to do the things that, to me, like in order to do things that are going to be really innovative and interesting for the personalization part, to your point about the data you have, you have a much different, like purview in terms of not just where somebody's spending with that one supplier or that one, or even just on travel or in that, but you have a much broader picture of their whole world, which if the customer is giving you the permission to do, you could, to your point, you could really come back with some much more, interesting, personalized kind of offers, rates, program, like things at the right, and that gets really exciting on one level if you're a willing participant in that. But then back to, in order to do that, I have to have a lot of trust that you're not just, using or misusing data to kind of get something out of me, right? And that's where I think that we mentioned that in the news articles. I still feel like that. I play with all the AI tools. I do some. Ed is he's been in every one of them, right? But I don't have any trust in those tools. I have a trust in I would have a trust in my banking and card relationship with you. And if you're using those tools, and I feel like appropriately, then I'm good with that. Give me a great offer on something, a program or something, I get excited, right? It's different as opposed to getting some random thing that you're like, ooh, how do they know that?
But I bet today you still keep a pretty hard firewall from the card spend patterns of an individual. I bet that doesn't cross over into the personalization experience of the travel portal, or does it? Are you able to use that data?
We are able to use that data. I mean, obviously safeguarded and through all the right channels and through our compliance and regulatory bodies and that, making sure that we're using it. But yes, we use it in the way that we are, or I should say we are in the process of using that in the way that we personalize the sites and try to get the right content. I mean, at the end of the day, right, you want to be able to find the things that you're looking for. We are a mall, right? We have content from a lot of different sources. And so navigating through that can sometimes, be a challenge. And so to the extent that we're able to help you with that, whether that's just the way we sort things and personalize that to you, Ed, versus you, Mike, versus or the marketing offers and how we, go after customers that may have not used us in a while to bring them back with, that's how we're using the data today.
Yeah, but even along those lines, if it, goes back to, man, what's old is new again, right? And I remember, back when I first started out in the industry, travel agents would do the old FAM trips, familiarization trips, where you'd get to know the destinations you're actually selling and offering to your customers. And I still feel like, kind of coming forward to today, it's AI could come up with all this wonderful, but has anyone actually done that trip? Do I like, somebody like vetted that offer? Like, I mean, I still think there's like there's something to that marrying all these elements, right? It can't be just about the technology to me. Maybe I'm showing my age and my relevance, that the way I think, but
you definitely are.
I guess I am. I mean, no, just because I think, but you have one, you have one bad review, one, my God, that trip was terrible. Did anyone actually go to that property? Like it was not what I thought I was buying. And it's not just the property, but then that's your reputation as Chase too. Like, I mean, that's what I'm getting at. Like, I think there's got to be some, it can't just all be about that. It has to be more also it's back to brand and brand reputation, which I think is going to carry the day. But anyway, well, kind of thinking through, like, when you look ahead now, boiling it down, top opportunities, challenges ahead in the next 12, 18, 24 months, like what's on your, what are you thinking about in the shower? What do you think, what are you worrying about when you go to bed? What's the, what's on your mind these days? Big picture.
Yeah, I mean, I think the immediate term is just keep plugging on the plan. Like, we've got, we set this thing in motion with sort of a 5-year plan, and we're chopping wood and getting through that. And I feel great about the execution of the team so far, but we've got some immediate things that, just do basic things, right? How do we improve the experience, making it easier for folks to find things, upgrading the commerce platform to be more modern looking and feeling. We're investing a lot in things like content and how do the inspiration stage, not just the transaction stage. So you can see like, hey, great new hotels here and great places to dine over here. So layering a lot of that in, and you've probably seen that if you've played around with our site, that's all sort of net new. We've got a whole team around doing that. Having, great content. The Edit is a prime example. Last year, we were the first online entity to have Southwest. They've just done a deal now. Expedia has them too. But listen, the fact that we're the only one in the loyalty space with that. So continuing to figure out how do we differentiate our content. We've got these great co-brand partners, right, that we're working with to be able to do that. So I feel really good about that. The longer term, I think, moat for us that we can start to build on is what we were talking about. Like, how do we harness the data in the right and appropriate way, given what we know about the customer? If we can do that, there's just an advantage there that no one else is going to be able to replicate. And I would say the other thing is, we're talking about travel, but the firm is invested in a lot of lifestyle assets. Our dining platform, we acquired a company called The Infatuation. Right. On the offer side, we own our own destiny there. We acquired a company called Fig. So we have all of these assets. And to the extent that we can, with data, start stitching these things together, where it's not just about the trip, it's about the things that you do on the trip. And it's about the value that we can deliver to you through, great offers to help you, during your trip, whether it's a new bathing suit or whatever that might be. Right. So those are our plans and strategy as part of this commerce world. And if we get that right, in my mind, that's the opportunity that really kind of separates us. So that's, coming in the coming years sort of thing once we get through our immediate cycle. But that's what I'm excited about. On the challenges, none of the macro stuff or even the competitive side is something that I worry too much about. I like keeping an eye on it, but at the end of the day, I think if we do what we're trying to do, we'll be fine. It's really around things like prioritization, right? I mean, there's just so many things we would like to do, and you're like, you think about these things, you're like, well, just stack rank them. But the reality is, it's hard. There's a lot of trade-off decisions of do this versus that, and we want to do it all. So making sure that we are really keeping our eye on the ball of these are the things that are important. Here's what we're going to deliver. Understanding what the customer is looking for. We use this jobs to be done product framework to really try to focus our attention on what are the problems we're trying to solve with the customer. And then I would say, just complacency, right? I mean, as you get into kind of BAU and moving through things, how do we make sure that we're, and this is really the job of leadership, to make sure that everyone is focused on the mission and the fact that there's a big mountain there that we're making progress on, but a lot more to do. So those is sort of be to the extent of it. All that said, I sleep well at night and I feel really good about where we're going.
Good for you.
I'm having a flashback to sitting in meetings with Ed where I would be like, yeah, we could do this and we could do this and this. And he'd look at me and be like, look,
What are we not
we're
doing?
going to talk about what we're going to do. You have to, he would force me to talk about what we're not doing. I'm having a flashback those days.
All good technology
right?
leaders and product leaders do that. You have to, right? You got to make choices.
That's right.
Yeah.
All right. So we have our season 3 wrap-up question. I'm going to read it. It's, we're all faced with real and perceived chaos in our personal and professional lives. So how do you cope with chaos in your life?
Oh my gosh. What a great question. I gotta figure out how to be short with this. So I would say that one of the things that I see just in a world that's pretty chaotic these days is, those people that have faith in something, some greater power, it doesn't matter what, is a real benefit in times of chaos. And so I'm fortunate enough where I have that and I anchor to it, believing there's a bigger picture sort of thing, and that there's reasons for things happening. There's a lot of comfort in that if you've got that. So, and I think increasingly as a world kind of, moves a little bit away from that and focus on self, things get a little more chaotic, right? Because you're less receptive to other points of view, and you're less receptive to the way things are as just kind of being the way they are. So I benefit from that. I anchor to it as much as I can, and it's great. Beyond that, I bought a sauna and a cold plunge, and I use both religiously, and they're absolutely amazing.
That's good. That's awesome.
Bring it down to practical daily, tools.
Something tangible, yeah.
Great answer. All right, Ed, what do you think? Should we ready to sign off?
That's great. Jason, thank you so much for your time. Jason Wynn is CEO of Chase Travel for JP Morgan Chase and Company. Jason, thanks for being a guest on the podcast today.
Guys, thanks for having me. Willing
Cheers.
to do it anytime. Good luck.
Great stuff.
All right, Mike, another great interview. What do you think?
Yeah, a lot to unpack, right?
Yeah.
When we go back and think. But again, it's really interesting. Like when you look at the landscape of travel and how, even with all the short-term kind of activities, the bigger picture of what's happening at a very macro level, and the growth of Chase Travel, and how far they've come in the last, since Jason joined, and they've put these, from the initial acquisition of CX Loyalty and kind of putting the building blocks together. It wasn't that long ago, right? I mean, it's very, you're not in the scheme of things and how far they've come. And I still remember when the first announcement that came out was when Chase acquired CX Loyalty.
Yep.
And then the Frosch, acquisition shortly afterwards. And it was kind of like, well, from inside the industry, it's like, well, I think I know where they're trying to go here, right? But it was like, wow, it was very ambitious, but also seemed like, wow, it's going to, take a long time to get to. But in real terms for the industry, they've moved fast. I mean, to grow from what they started with, and certainly to where they've gone in the period of time in terms of volume, scale, and everything, it's really impressive. I mean, it's quite a journey, right?
Yep. Yeah. I really liked his answer on personalization. I would love to spend an hour talking to him about it, because I would argue that the first bank that actually cracks the firewall between all of the spend patterns on my credit card over a vast sum of of time and data, and uses that to really understand my intent. We use it to understand what I want out of my portal experience, what I want out of my travel experience, the add-ons that I get when I arrive and from travel, from a swimsuit to suntan lotion to the experiences. The first bank portal that can crack that and really use AI and personalization to drive that, I think will win the game in a big way. So kudos for Jason to saying that they're on their way to cracking that. And
Yeah.
I do think the first bank that does that will make a huge dent in the marketplace. So I'll be really excited to see more of that from Chase.
I agree. And, I mean, look, your purview sitting when you worked with iSeats, my work in past like Air Canada and another, not to mention the card brand, but like, there's a lot we also have a lot of insight into that whole, what's involved there but I agree with you. I think that's right at the heart of the matter, what you just said. I really do, in terms of, and like he said too, the moat that, how they can really form even a bigger moat around their customer base and keeping them loyal. Because the dream is that, as if you're a Chase card holder, when I think travel, the first thing I do is like, let me go check the Chase portal and kind of see what's there, see what they're offering me. I might go out and shop and compare still, but at some point, I'm going to do that less and less if I feel like I'm really, getting everything I need, right?
Yeah, and in a
Then it
personalized
becomes the
way,
path of least
understanding.
resistance.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
All right, Mike, I believe that is our show today. Listen, if you have a challenge in your business or want to better understand the category of travel, reach out to us at Travel Again to see how we can help bring clarity to your business. Now backed by Focusrite data and research. Mike, that is it for today. We will see you back again during our next show.
Terrific. See you soon, Ed.
Cheers.